All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Blunt and Biased. We're going to just kick this off. Dang it, I do this every time. Let me shut off this stupid email. You'd think I'd learn by now. I swear. It's the same thing every week. I am Teresa Paganini. I am a health coach, weight management specialist, and behavioral change specialist. And I help people learn to love themselves so they can work themselves into a leaner body. I focus predominantly on mindset, then the mouth, meaning nutrition, and then on movement. And the beautiful sidekick next to me is Dr. Katie, and I'll have her take it away.
Hey, everybody. Dr. Katie Schneller with Inclusive Natural Medicine. My practice is in Tempe, and I do a lot of management of chronic illness, specifically for gut diseases, autoimmune things, and in general, people that have been to a bunch of specialists that haven't been able to figure out what's wrong. So Teresa and I partnered up specifically for my patients that do all sorts of fun food sensitivity panel testing, and so we have some mutual patients, but we also have this podcast, Blunt and Biased, to help share our expertise so that you don't have to go down the Google rabbit hole. So
Yeah.
this week. Yeah.
So this topic today, I'm super passionate about this. And this is a humongous topic when I'm meeting with prospective clients. And this is also how I focus all of my conversations with my clients for the duration of our work together. And it was something you and I talked about because a frustration for people in our field is almost being more passionate about someone else's success than them. And then really feeling, from my side of it, I struggle with feelings of failure or what didn't I do well enough when the client looks at me going, well, why isn't this working? And it's truly not for lack of what I'm doing, but for lack necessarily of what they're doing. But why didn't I inspire them enough? Right? So today's podcast is really about what is that one secret thing? And I think people want it to be a pill or a shot or a something. And truly, in my decades of experience in this line of work, the thing that truly is the secret to success is willingness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this came up for us because I am a patient of Dr. Katie's, and part of her intake form is how good of a patient are you, and like how good of a patient will you be? And I answered very honestly on a scale of 1 to 10, and I was like, I'm probably a 5, and that's not the answer you want.
No, yeah. In fact, if you come into my office and you put a 5 out of 10, I probably will fire you as a patient right away.
Thank God we're friends. But right, we had to have a very candid conversation about the reality of how quickly I will become well or improve on the areas we're focusing on if my willingness is at a 5. And so that's how we got into this topic, to realize, hey, I'm in the field and I'm at a 5. So for somebody who's not in the field, like really entering into a consultation, entering into a conversation with a healthcare provider, being very self-aware of your willingness level.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Katie, talk a little bit about your experience with willingness or lack thereof, and success versus, struggle.
I think a lot of people, so just to kind of begin, on my intake form at the very bottom, I have on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your willingness to adopt new changes during this time, 10 being the most. And for the most part, people put 10, 9, 8. I think you were my first 5. I think
I'm self-aware.
I think you're not like willing to be more than a 5 initially. That it's you probably aren't in my office in the first place,
Right.
Just because, especially with naturopathic care, most of the time it's out of pocket costs, so people don't want to waste time there. So you have that question, and then I ask you, who are your biggest supporters during this time? Because it's important that we have other people around us that are going to help lift us up and help support us when we're feeling weak. In reality, though, outside of asking, like, what are some obstacles for you? Why aren't you a 10 out of 10? Or if you are, still, what are your obstacles? Most people say financial concerns or my memory, because sometimes I'm not good at taking supplements consistently. And I know that care with a naturopathic doctor most of the time is, you know, you have to be consistent with those things. So I do my best to ask what are your no-goes? Like, what are you absolutely not going to change? Because if that's the only thing holding you back, like, I mean, this sounds horrible, but if you have to have 1 cup of soda a day in order to get through your day, I'm going to work around that and probably send you to Teresa to see if there's anything we can do to change that. But in the meantime, you're a human being. We're all human beings. And so if, you know, you have to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room, that's the only thing that's sustainable. But you've got to have that self-awareness in the first place to be able to communicate that to me for our success.
So I'm curious, for all those people that say 9 or 10, how often is that actually not true?
It's pretty rare that I follow up with a patient that hasn't done anything, you know? And
like a 9 or 10 to me is I did everything. Like I'm doing everything and I'm doing exactly what you tell me to. That's a 9 or a 10. Where do people generally fall?
Probably an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of things that I do to try to help support, you know, my patients. So like let's see, who gave us the thumbs up here? Oh, Michelle. Hey girl, see you later. I think I try to mitigate like as much like confusion as possible too, because that really can be some of it sometimes, you know, and then I have my chat feature through my electronic charting system where people can direct message me, and, you know, in a HIPAA compliant way and ask about questions on their treatment plan if it didn't come up at the time of the visit. But, you know, you've got outlined what you're supposed to take, what time of day, with or without food, how many, what side effects to look out for, future options. That's on your FullScript account. That's on your treatment plan. That's what I say out loud to you, you know, and it's uploaded into your chart. So there's so many different places that, you know, help people not be confused about it at least. And then really, unless some major life thing comes up, which has happened a few times, most people are doing most of the plan, if not all of it, I would say. How about you though?
That's good. So I generally find that people they want to lose weight. Wanting to lose weight's not hard, right? Like the wanting of it is relatively easy. The effort it takes to do it is a whole other ball game. And like you, I'm not covered by insurance, and so I am a cost. But more importantly, I think that what people struggle with isn't my cost; it's their cost in time and effort. And so the greatest struggle my clients tend to have is the time and effort to fit in the healthy habit.
Yeah.
And so we have to talk a lot about, so what I do, guys, is I find out everything about your lifestyle, and then your plan is built around your lifestyle. So if you are in a car driving for your business 10 hours a day, then our plan is going to be built around you being in a car, right? You're not going to have meals with fork and knife. You can't eat that way. Right. Right? If you are a nurse or a doctor and you are constantly on the go, especially those of my clients that work in a hospital, there's very few breaks. Well, you still need to eat, you still need to hydrate. So how do we create a plan that's realistic for your life? I think that's the number one reason why plans fail. Yeah. They're cookie cutter and they're just not realistic for every lifestyle. And you really need to choose something that works for your lifestyle. So I say all of that because when I when I do my free consultations with folks, and we do talk about, okay, so what is your willingness to eat differently? What is your willingness to try new foods? What is your willingness to make yourself a priority? For some people are like, and they really have to think that through. For some, they answer really quickly, oh, totally. And then I have to actually ask some pretty pointed questions to get to the actual truth of that. So a question that's, I've had a few actually just in the last few weeks where they were like, I'm super busy. I don't even eat right now. I miss breakfast. I basically eat at 6 o'clock at night and that's it. I don't take breaks. I don't do this or I don't do that. Okay. So what is your willingness to give yourself a lunch break? Sure. I'll absolutely do that. And I will like look at them and be like, look me in the face. Are you truly willing to do that? And they're like, well, yeah, no. And I was like, well, don't tell me you are, right?
Right.
Like I can't work a plan for you if
Yeah.
you're going to tell me one thing, right? Like people are like, yes, I will food log. No, you're not. Like if you're not, tell me. Then we work around it.
Yeah.
But that willingness, your level of willingness dictates your level of success, specifically in my field. Now, people are coming to you because they feel like poop. People are coming to me often because they somewhat feel like poop, but they look differently than they want to.
Right.
The motivation, I think, may be a little bit different. But yeah, that willingness is huge. I think people are very fascinated because I don't promote dieting. I promote eating in a healthy, enjoyable manner. A lot of my clients, I have to ask them, what is your willingness to trust the process? Because so many will come to me, they pay me, and then they do their own thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why did you pay me?
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't want you eating boiled chicken, steamed broccoli, and brown rice 4 times a day because you will fail eventually. Yes, you're going to lose weight. You've done that, but that's what you did before. I'm not about losing weight now. I'm about keeping it off forever,
Right.
being healthy. And so that's another willingness. Are you willing to trust me?
Yeah.
And that's huge.
I think that it's trust you, but it's also trust that what we're being told about food and what it does for us, and whether it's bad or whether it's good, really is total. It's changed, and we have to trust the professionals to be able to do that. And also, you have to deal with your own guilt about like, well, Teresa's telling me to eat more, and that's supposed to make me lose weight. Like what? Like blows your mind, most of the time. And so it's trusting the process, trusting the professional, but also I think something important that you hit on is finding and working with a professional, no matter what your goals are, be it a doctor, a health coach, nutritionist, doesn't matter, therapist, who's willing to work with your existing lifestyle for the most part and will tell you and ask you where you're willing and able to make changes, because doing what you were doing up until you met that provider is not working for you for some reason. So there will be changes required. There's not going to be like, oh, you should have told me from the beginning this was your goal. Here's this magic injection that we'll do and one time and you'll be fixed forever. That's
Right.
not ever the way that it works. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think something to consider, because I definitely, I'm a very, when I profess living in the gray, but I'm a very black and white speaker sometimes where I can come across pretty strong and scare people. But the willingness factor is huge, but it is on a scale, just like your intake form says, right? And so a lot of the times what we do is with willingness comes adaptation, right? So there is the conversation about options. And just because you're unwilling to do this doesn't mean you'll fail or you shouldn't start, right? So one of the things I loved with Dr. Katie is I hate taking supplements. I have a cabinet filled with them that I've had for years. They're probably 10 years expired. Like I will buy them and I will not take them. So she respected that, right? But she gave me like 4 options. Like, okay, so there are supplements, but then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. And here's the cost difference between them. Here's the commitment difference between them. Here's, right? And so it made me feel like, okay, I am resistant to this. My willingness is like a 2, but that doesn't mean I can't get care, right? And so we came up with an option that I was able to take advantage of immediately and start moving forward in my progress in my own health. And the same thing in my form of practice as well. And you currently don't eat breakfast, as just an example. And I'd like you to eat breakfast to get your metabolism sparked. And you're like, yeah, I don't have the time. And the thought of food that early in the morning grosses me out. Okay, how do you feel about drinking your breakfast? Like, is that something you could do and kind of sip along the way? And usually they're like, oh, I could do that. Great, right? So like, there's always a solution if you're willing to look for it and be open to it.
Yeah. And to make changes. And that's the point, I think, too. So many people come to see me, and I'm sure they've come to see you, and you'll be fired by a provider if you don't do what they say. Sometimes, especially with the allopathic world, like if you don't take this medication, I'm not going to see you. If you don't do the surgery, I'm not going to see you. Right. And so our goal, and especially like in naturopathic medicine, but also in really well-rounded holistic care when it comes to nutrition and diet and lifestyle and your eating habits, should be, as we always talk about, individualized to you and to your needs. We want to promote your best health, optimize your wellness. And in doing that, you are part of the picture. You are never going to stick to something just because somebody told you to do it. It has to come from you. And so when we're talking about willingness this whole time, I think something that's really important, be it working with a healthcare provider or something else really difficult in your life, maybe it's your job, maybe it's a relationship. What is your why for that? Get really clear. Why did you come to see me? Why did you come to see Dr. Teresa? Maybe you'll be a doctor someday.
That sounds great.
Why did you see Teresa? Why did you go see somebody else? Why are you working? Why are you exercising? Why are you a mom? Just all of these things. It's so important to take time to introspect and, which means like look inside yourself and get really clear on why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't know why you're doing it in the first place, you're never going to stick to it, no matter how easy it is. We could be like, drink 4 glasses of water a day. You'd be like, done. Easy, done. But then eventually you're going to stop doing it, right? If you don't remember and like remind yourself what your intention was in starting care in the first place, or starting your job in the first place, or creating a hobby in the first place, right? Like get really clear on your why. Keep it visible if you want, somewhere that you look at every day to remind yourself why you're making these habits, why you're working with these people like us. Because we don't want you to fail either. Like we talked about in the beginning, we feel bad. We're humans. We're like, but what I do?
Right? What didn't I do? What could I have done differently?
Right. Yeah. But it is a two-way street. So get really clear on your why.
Yeah. And I think it is absolutely okay and actually very smart when you self-assess your willingness to make the decision, now's just not the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, right? I think it's totally okay, because no matter who you go to for care, it is an investment in energy. It is an investment in time. It is an investment in money. And when you make that level of investment and are truly incapable or not yet ready to be successful, it's a waste all the way around, and it validates failure. And in my line of work, failure is my greatest enemy to success with my clientele. They've failed so many times in the past on diet after diet after diet. They've lost faith in their ability to succeed. And so failure is already enemy number one that we're fighting against. And so I never want to take on a client if I believe I will help them validate that failure. Yeah. If we're going to work together, we're going to validate success. And it could be in small increments, but as long as we're making forward progress and there's a willingness to change just enough to make that forward progress and be happy with slower progress based on lower willingness, right? Once again, your level of willingness dictates how quickly you succeed. So if your willingness is lower and you're okay with slower success as a result of it, we're golden. Yeah. We're golden. But if your willingness is lower and you still want to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks, those two don't go hand in hand. Like that's not going to happen.
How do you how can you tell people how to know whether it's the right time or not?
So a lot of it is through the questioning, right? I most of what I do is I ask really good questions, and then usually my clientele work themselves to their own answers. Mm-hmm. And if somebody is saying 2 different things, I work 16 hours a day, I don't have time to eat, I've got 4 kids, I'm exhausted, and I'm barely treading water. Mm-hmm. And then they say, I'm 100% ready to commit to this entirely. I'm going to eat 5 times a day. I'm going to cook all my meals fresh. There's a disconnect. And so that's when I step in and go, okay, so this is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Tell me how that's going to work. Mm-hmm. And then they realize, right, there's a want and then there's reality. And when they get lost in their want, they lose sight of reality. And when they're in their reality, they lose hope in their want. And so we've got to bring a level of reality and hope together in a more realistic picture. And if that realistic picture is amenable, if that's cool, we proceed.
Yeah.
If that's not what they're looking for, then we don't.
Yeah. I do a stress quiz with my patients to kind of identify like what's been going on for them the last 6 months. And then we talk a little bit about how busy they are now. And then I directly ask the same thing as you. I think that's why we started a podcast called Blunt and Biased. We are blunt with you. We will be honest with you. There is no other way. About how able you feel like you are to making changes, to decreasing something, to adding something. It's not always going to be adding more things to your plate. It's not always going to be eat more. It's not always going to be
Cook.
more tasks on your to-do list. It's potentially less, or it's, when I give dietary recommendations to my patients based off of, let's say somebody has PCOS, I'll tell them these are some things to eat more of and try to avoid. So we're talking about food shifting. We're talking about grabbing certain things more and grabbing other things less. It's not a diet, because everyone has some, I think PTSD around those words. I don't know anyone who hasn't been on some form of a diet for some period of time for some reason. And that can sometimes really help, but also just being really transparent with your provider and with yourself about what you're actually able to do. And if something changes, that's okay. I had someone who was like so ready. They did blood work. They did their food sensitivity panel. They were excellent about their supplements. And then they got COVID like 3 weeks in or so. Their COVID lasted a particularly long time. Then when they were finally feeling better, they celebrated that they weren't, dead. And then they ate like shit, and they didn't, they didn't do anything with their food sensitivity panel. They stopped all their supplements. And then they got super busy at work after that, and they couldn't find a way to prioritize. But we still had a follow-up, and we checked through all their symptoms, and like, yeah, that hasn't changed much. And yeah, no real, it's not better. Oh, well, maybe that's a little bit better, but not really, and it's because nothing's really happened. But at least you're there with your provider to be honest about what you're able to do and how life has been, because again, we're still humans and we totally get it, but you don't have to fall off the wagon necessarily either. If you really were ready and then something happened and then something else happened and something else happened that just pushed it out a little bit. I'm at least understanding about that. I don't know what do you do if somebody's like, oh, I didn't do anything because I went on vacation and then somebody passed away and then I had work get really hectic. Like, at what point do you say, I don't think it's the right time for us to work together?
Well, so one of the conversations that I have with people, because I hear this a lot, is just like, I'm too busy, or when life calms down, I'll start. And I have a very blunt and biased, life will never calm down.
No.
Life will never calm down.
Sure.
And so this is why people that struggle with their weight, because it's constantly doing this, because when life is calm, I can focus, but when it can't, that's my excuse to eat whatever I want. And that's not true. Not if you want to maintain a healthy weight. And so what I do talk about is say, look, life will always be chaos. That is what life is. What we need to do is understand how to remain successful in a life of chaos. That doesn't mean perfection. Perfection is never the answer. What it is improvement. And so maybe when you're at this really chaotic time, weight maintenance is our new goal. And as long as we don't gain weight while you're going on your 4 vacations and all of a sudden you're moving and there's this, that, and the other, weight maintenance is an actually phenomenal goal, but that still requires attention. It still requires effort. It just doesn't require the same amount of effort. And so we talk about how do we succeed at weight maintenance. But at no point do I ever say, you're right, your life's too busy, go ahead and just keep gaining weight.
Yeah.
Right? Because you will then always continue to gain weight because it's now it's an approved excuse. And so what I teach people is if you're creating a lifestyle, there is no approved excuse. What there is an adaptation of goal and of priority. I feel like your health should always be in your top 5. but
Yeah.
it can't always be your number one. And
Mhm.
so when it needs to drop down to number 4, weight maintenance is your goal.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? And we start talking through, how do we maintain weight versus focus on losing weight, and mentally come to a place of acceptance that the scale is going to say the same thing every week. And that's okay. That's actually reason to celebrate. Every week that scale doesn't go up is a huge celebration of success, because that's our new goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you do a lot of work with people that helps them kind of reframe their goals, because a lot of people would love to be 80 pounds lighter by tomorrow, and that's the thing, just doesn't happen. But you bring up an interesting point about values, basically. And I think a lot of us are more concerned with appearance and maybe self-esteem and judgment of others or something, versus actual health and wellness. And if that's not, if health and wellness optimization are not in your top 5 values, then maybe you just work on accepting where your body is and the weight that you're at, and don't should on yourself. Don't shame yourself. Don't give yourself guilt about how you look now, because you know that better health and getting your blood drawn and preventative medicine and taking supplements and exercising and things like that just aren't in the cards for you. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Not everybody has health as their top 5 value, as one of their top 5. There are exercises online too if you're not sure. And I think it's kind of a fun exercise to do for yourself every 6 months to a year or something, is to figure out what's really important to you right now. Maybe it's romantic relationships, family, professional success, and then health, or something like that. But there are some exercises that you can find online. There's even like sets of value cards that you can kind of like pick and choose and prioritize. I did that with a therapist of mine a number of years ago, and I was like, this is actually really interesting for me to think about and prioritize like what's more important. So before you hire anybody else, if whoever, everyone that's watching, hi everybody, if you're not working with one of us yet, or anybody else who's in the healthcare field, don't necessarily be upset or think that you're supposed to. Just make sure that health is actually one of your top values, because otherwise, don't worry about it.
And to Dr. Katie's point, 2 points. One, stop shooting on yourself. Like if it's not a priority, then you need to come to a place of self-acceptance and self-love. And if I have 2 programs, literally you get them both for $7. So one is self-love, how to develop self-love. And the other one is sexy at every size. So if you're 100 pounds overweight, how do you feel sexy in your body, even if you want to be smaller? And I think based on what we were just talking about, if you're at this place where you're like, I'm just not ready to do anything, but I'm not happy where I'm at, well, we need to get you to a place of acceptance of where you're at. And my programs do that. So reach out to me, loveyourselflean.com, Teresa at loveyourselflean.com, any of those. And I'll be more than happy to send you so you can get into the program. $7, that's a coffee, for God's sakes. And you get them both. But it's important. Self-acceptance, self-love is super huge. And 2, go back to your why, like Dr. Katie was talking about earlier. Most people, when they say they want to lose weight, their first thought is because they want to look better. But if you really dive into your why, it is so much more than that. It is impacting your self-esteem. It is impacting your self-confidence. When somebody else has something to say about you that's unkind, if you truly loved who you were, if you felt good in your body about yourself, nothing anybody else would say would have any power over you. That's what you're going for. That's truly your why. You want to feel confident to be loved just as you are. That's a true why. Looking nice, looking good. I mean, nobody's ever satisfied with the way they look. Find a fitness competitor, they're going to have an issue. It's beyond that. And so understand your why, and that'll help you understand your priorities and your values. And kind of to sum this up from the willingness perspective, I think being very self-aware of what your willingness really is going to be huge. Mm-hmm. 2, being honest with yourself, being honest with your provider, and being willing to be open to options and adaptation. There's more than one way why did we make this phrase "one way to kill a cat"? I'm not sure where that came from, but there's more than one way to skin a cat or something. That's a phrase, and it's awful. But there's more than one way to do something. And so, if your willingness is not at a 9, if it's not at a 10, understand that there are options there, and one of those options may be not now, and that's okay. This is your life. We're simply here to help you, and it's okay. But you do need to come to a place of acceptance if that is what the decision you make.
Yeah. I think starting with where you are now, starting with loving and accepting as much as you can with where you are now and everything that your body does do for you. You know, you may want to lose weight, but can you see and hear and smell and taste and touch? That's cool. Can you walk? You know, can you sit? Can you go from sitting to standing? I mean, there's so many things that we take advantage of. So love and accept yourself where you're at. And that's the best place to be at. Just be like, I want to improve all these things, but you know, I really am grateful for now. I really appreciate my body still now. Yeah. So I think that's all. We're a little over time just by a minute. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah. Super appreciate you guys watching. We don't know what we're going to talk about in the next 2 weeks, but if you have any suggestions, don't hesitate to reach out to either Katie or I. And I did throw up on there how you can reach me if you're interested in one of those programs just to develop that self-acceptance, self-love, because that's more important. And actually, that's necessary for successful and sustained weight loss and health anyway. I think everybody should always go through one of those programs. So have an amazing day. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.